So good day, everyone. Our topic is dental schooling amidst the pandemic, the impact of remote learning on the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of dentistry students in Manila Central University. Our group consists of Camacho Patricia Ann, Echeverry, Nisda, Rivera, Sarmiento, and Serrano. So what are the objectives? It is to assess the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of the students. Next is to identify the factors affecting the impact of remote learning on the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of dentistry students. The third and the last is to evaluate the needed support of the students during COVID-19 pandemic. So for the introduction, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, schools and colleges around the world transitioned into online classes. The health and safety of everyone is the utmost priority during the pandemic, and online schooling is only the best option during these times. The lack of social interaction in online learning leads to feelings of loneliness, lack of motivation, and isolation. Staying focused on online classes is a challenge. Separating home lives, laboratory, and class time, not following a routine schedule, and distraction at home makes it difficult for students to focus on the lesson. So the purpose of this study is to provide better understanding of current situation of the students of College of Dentistry in Manila Central University. This study analyzes the mental health status of students during the pandemic and investigates the learning conditions needed to support students.
And for the review of related literature, this chapter presents the review local and foreign literature and studies related to the present study. This literature and studies are related to the study since this also deal with the impact of remote learning on the emotional, physiological, and social well-being of the students. The researchers made use of the various sources such as book, theses, and other printed materials. So we divided our RRL into different types. One is the foreign literature and the second one is the local literature. And then for the first article that we have for foreign literature, it is the remote learning and students' mental health during COVID-19 pandemic mixed method inquiry. And then next we have the perceived social support, physiological capital, and subjective well-being among college students in the context of online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then next, we have addressing collegiate mental health amid COVID-19 pandemic. And then application of DenTeach in remote dentistry teaching and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic, a case study. Impact of COVID-19 on academic activity and health status among Romanian medical dentistry students across sectional study. And then for the local literature, we have the effects of COVID-19 to dental education and practice in the Philippines. And then the stigma of exclusion and mental health during COVID-19, two cases from the Philippines. Next. We have the student perception on online and distance learning and the motivation and learning strategies in using educational technologies during COVID-19 pandemic. And then knowledge, attitude, anxiety, and coping strategies of students during COVID-19 pandemic. And then the physiological impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines.
For the methodology, our research design, the research design to be used in the study is a cross-sectional approach to properly assess the data to be collected from the study participants. A cross-sectional design simply analyzes data from a population or a representative subset at a specific point in time. The respondents of the study are dentistry students of Manila Central University. Our research locale is at Manila Central University in Caloocan City. For data gathering procedure, the researchers will be administering a questionnaire tool among dentistry students of Manila Central University. The data gathered will be arranged and categorized per year level in the fourth part of the study, which contains the presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. The statistical treatment of data, sampling procedure by usage of the simple percentage, mean population, and mean average formula. The data gathered will also be arranged by frequency and percentage distribution.
For the data analysis and interpretation of results.
So this chapter discusses the data analysis and findings from 115 questionnaires completed by the respondents. The purpose of this study was to provide better understanding of the current situation of the students of the College of Dentistry in Manila Central University.
So the objectives of the study: first, to assess the emotional, physiological, and social well-being of the students. Next is to identify the factors affecting the impact of remote learning on the emotional, psychological, and social well-being of dentistry students. Lastly, to evaluate the needed support of the students during COVID-19 pandemic.
Table 4.2 shows that the majority of the respondents were females. The age of the respondents, as shown in Table 4.3, ranges from 18 years old to 43 years old. Next. So for the year level, it was shown in the table that the highest number of the respondents came from the first-year students with a percentage of 28.7%, followed by the third-year students with a percentage of 23.5%, and the fourth-year students with a percentage of 22.6%. The least number of respondents came from the sixth-year students with a percentage of 10.4%, followed by the second-year students with a percentage of 14.8%.
So for the table 4.4, the data gathered from the study were distributed in 4 categories: emotional, environmental, psychological, social, and physical. In the first area, most of the respondents answered that during the past few months, they have sometimes felt upset because of something that happened. Most of them also answered in the past few months, they have sometimes felt that they were unable to control the important things in their life. Majority of them agreed that they feel confident about their ability to handle interpersonal problems sometimes. In terms of feeling that things were going their way, most of the respondents answered that they experienced it only sometimes. Majority of them also answered that they sometimes share their feelings and experiences with other people. Next slide. In the environmental category, most of the respondents answered that during the past few months, they have sometimes dealt with uncomfortable situations successfully. Most of them also answered that they seldom realized that they could not cope with all the things that they needed to do. Majority of them also answered that the idea of the pandemic affect their focus sometimes. Most of the respondents agree that they always worry with everything that is happening in the world these days. Most of them also answered that they sometimes feel that things are uncertain because of the pandemic. Next slide.
In the third area, which is the psychological category, majority of the respondents have sometimes felt stress during the past few months. Majority of them also agreed to feeling that they were effectively coping with important changes occurring in their lives sometimes. Most of the respondents answered that they sometimes control irritations in their life well. During the past few months, most of the respondents sometimes felt uncomfortable. Most of them also engaged in new activities in the new era sometimes. Next slide. In the social category, most of the respondents answered that during the past few months, they have sometimes felt comfortable about their ability to handle their interpersonal problems. Most of them have also answered that they seldom felt that they were on top of things. Most of them agree that they always work with their classmates despite being in a remote learning situation. As for spending quality time with their family, most of them still always do. Majority of them also answered that they always have time to check up on their family and friends.
So in the last category, which is the physical category, most of the respondents seldom get enough sleep. Most of them also skip meals due to stress and a heavy workload sometimes. As for the exercise, most of them answered that they only rarely exercise, and majority of the respondents rarely take their time off when they are sick. Lastly, majority of them also agreed to allotting free time for themselves seldom. So let's proceed with the next portion. So this is the last portion of our tool, which is the rate of mental health. As we can see in this table, this is the result of the overall rating of the mental health of our respondents from this study. Next. Now let's proceed with the summary and conclusion of this presentation. So overall, health and well-being require a good balance of emotional, environmental, psychological, social, and physical factors. The researchers therefore concluded that there are a wide variety of factors that influences and contribute to the development of a mental health problem. All of these factors must be taken into consideration to understand its background completely. So upon checking and after thorough assessment and evaluation of the data presented to us from our respondents, we concluded that remote learning has a significant impact on the emotional, environmental, psychological, social, and physical well-being of dentistry students in Manila Central University. Next. So that would be all for our presentation. And this is the bibliography for our presentation, for our today's presentation. So again, we are the Group 1, and thank you so much for listening.